Ahlan wa sahlan and welcome to this video. So this video is gonna be a little bit of a chit chat about like converting to Islam or reverting to Islam as an adult. And I think that first and foremost it is like kind of depending on what age that person would be in, because a younger person who is like, let's say, in the middle of their 20s or something, and deciding to revert to Islam, they are more like maybe less stuck in their own values and more like adaptable into taking up new ideas, and also to potentially be willing of, because they don't have the set of like values that are like keeping them into a frame or a box of thinking. So they are more like open to new ideas, compared with a person who is like older, like let's say above 50 years old. People who are older, they probably gonna have a harder time to accept new ideas, and also because it will be like there will be a conflict, like discrepancy between the personal values and the new ideas. So in between here there will be some like conflict in the perspectives, which will be like affecting the individuals or person's form of perspective on those ideas and the religion, because there's like always this whole like the personal identity and stuff that might be so structured in a certain way that it's not so easy to take in new things without feeling that that personality or something is gonna be reduced or like forsaken, or that there's something, let's say, I'm gonna come to a very important point about accepting Islam as an adult, because this is really interesting topic in the first place. But some people who are older, they will most likely feel that if they are accepting something that is not something they have been exposed to in their past life, or like not their past life but throughout their life, they will feel like, okay, they wasn't aware of something else that was better or like more appropriate to believe in, so they will feel like they have done wrong. And also it might be something about pride, like some people will feel like if they're going to accept a new religion as an older person, they will feel like they have to, because if you're coming to Islam you have to do the shahada, that showing that you are a believer, and you have to walk into maybe some group of other Muslims, and you are like sort of having to, in that same situation, sort of say that, okay, I have not done the right thing up until now, and now I'm like taking on from the right path, and I don't have so much of life in front of me, because older people, they are more like, they have a shorter lifespan ahead of them, so they feel like whatever they've done up until that point in life, it must be the right thing, otherwise they will feel like they have done wrong. And so, but as I said, for younger people, I think it's more about easier to accepting ideas, especially if you getting yourself in a social context where you are exposed to new ideas, because you are still able to form your own personality and your core values up until you are 25 years old, approximately, and you are like more willing, because you don't feel like, okay, if I accepting this idea, I feel like I have done like wrong in my life. Like there's no shame among younger people if they are accepting new ideas, versus an older person, they're gonna feel shame. This is what I was looking for as a word. Like they will feel shame for themselves if they accepting Islam as an old person, because then the rest of their life they have lived, it was wrong. in the sense that they was not acknowledging Islam as a religion. So this fact that shame and like discrepance and like, you know, personality, like confusions and stuff, when an older person might be accepting Islam, these things might happen, and that, I think that is something that preventing people from actually taking on and reverting into Islam as an older person versus if there is a younger person. And also, of course, we know that there are all these, you know, negative images of Muslims exposed and or like displayed and created and constructed in media. And obviously, if that is the image that people are observing and they're taking that as a stereotypical illustration of a Muslim, that then their whole worldview is going to be very, you know, messed up, because it's not representing reality. It's representing a constructed image in the media, and it's not really displaying the whole truth and reality. So obviously, individuals striving towards being associated with some group that has positive attributes, such as from a capitalistic and individualistic perspective, people are likely to be willing of taking on identities and like how should I say, identity constructions that are aligned with whatever might be attributed to someone who has a high socioeconomic status in a society, in a capitalistic society. And that is in itself a form of constructed image, you know, of something. So but it doesn't mean that that is the truth or the absolute form of best personality just because that person has a lot of resources at hand. But that might be something affecting. And also from an individualistic perspective, some people, I think, accepting Islam, like actually reverting, they have a problem in like taking on that collectivistic like worldview, like to have this whole concept of a ummah, or like a, you know, connection to other Muslims and stuff, because they have been brought up and socialized and, you know, created these value systems that are individualistic, where the person's own striving is the most important thing in life. Versus among Muslims, you have like, you know, you are referring to something that is even beyond life, and that is connecting you to other Muslims and, you know, these things. So but yeah, so there's like some different aspects you can like notice. But I find that so interesting because me myself is in Sweden, and there is a lot of old people in Sweden. You can look at the demographic statistics and you will see there is a lot of people who are old in Sweden. And I think in such context, society, social context, it's very hard for old people who are maybe being brought up without Islam to actually accepting Islam and becoming reverts, just because they will feel like shame if they would go and become Muslims, because they have created this self-image or like identity for themselves without Islam. And then if Islam was the right thing, it means they have led their whole life without Islam, which was the right thing for them. So in that way, it might become like a fear and shame and reduction of pride, and also like confusion with their own identity if they take up a completely new identity as a Muslim. I don't say that Muslim identity is the only identity that a certain individual can hold, because you can always have like professional roles, you can have, you know, social roles and stuff, but as a religious identity. And so I think that is like one of the aspects that is a lot of, you know, psychological reasonings behind this resistance towards making a step into Islam. But I think people who are socializing among Muslims become more prone actually towards accepting Muslims, and even if they don't convert or revert, they still feel like it is something that is, it's just like anything else. It's not anything that is even weird. Like their own way of maybe living without Islam is maybe a weird thing, because there is like, you know, spirituality and religion, and when you're combining those two things, you have something that is kind of strong, you know, from a perspective of psychological theory. You have like you know, these abilities of actually connecting into something that is abstract and into abstract values, and that is not even something that is concrete, that you even can experience as some materialistic form of phenomena. So for the people who are like able, have the psychological mental ability of actually connecting into something that is more abstract, that is a form of human ability, but it's something that in this individualistic context, and in a context that is not acknowledging spirituality as something that is valid, something that is even, you know, like seen as something positive, uh, these forms of abilities are gonna be like reduced and maybe just not work anymore. Because, and I can compare this with something else, like if you if you um, if you are in an individualistic context and you yourself is brought up individualistically, you will not be connecting with into group thinking, in the sense that you will be, you know, perceiving the rest of the family's actions as your own, you know, affecting you or something, or that you have any part in that. It's more about your personal striving that is at the forefront. So, and that is also a form of thinking. So you also see that maybe some other abilities and stuff, when it's concerning these sociological principles and things, maybe get lost in that, because you are focusing on certain things. And most aspects, you know, is something you need to practice, whether it's a physical capability or if it's a mental capability, whatever. It's something you need to practice in order to actually be able to conduct it. That's why one of the reasons we probably have educational systems, because whatever you want to learn, you have to practice, you know. So these are just some thoughts I wanted to share, because I see a lot of these like confusions among people who are not Muslims towards Muslims. And it's not just, I think some people, because they also are not Muslims or they have never been, they feel like they don't know how they would be able to integrate such identity into their own self-image, you know. And if there's like a large like gap in actually be able to perceive the self as a Muslim, then there's very little like, you know, motivation behind actually be able to proceed into such identity, you know, and take such actions that might be required. And also in terms of these negative stereotypical images of Muslims that are displayed, I don't think those images are gonna help in reducing fear in general towards other like ways of thinking, or other forms of expressions of identities or groups or social forms and all these things. I don't think these forms of fears about social realities or social alternatives or ways of thinking, that fear is a problem in the individual who is experiencing the fear. But I don't think that infusing that fear among people is gonna be benefiting, you know. It's not gonna benefit anyone if people are afraid of Muslims. It's gonna be more like a problem that you have to solve among people who are experiencing that fear. So yeah, what else could I say? But yeah, it's more like also, as I said, you know, there's like difference between spirituality and religion, and I think that some people who are considering reverting into Islam as an older person, they will also mix up religion with spirituality, or try and find some definition of what is the religion, what is the spirituality in this. And I think it can be very hard actually to develop this spirituality if you don't take up certain disciplining forms of the self that you can find in the religion, especially if you have not experienced any of these spiritual, aspects of the self. And also, like, concerning the religion, I think some people are focusing more on physical attributes because we are in a very materialistic era of time. So a lot of people, they will look at Muslims, and the most thing they're focusing on are the physical attributes of Muslims without actually thinking about the other forms of aspects of the religion. So, for example, wearing a headscarf, that is a materialistic form of expression of the religion, but it's not even, it's just the top of the iceberg, you might want to say, because you can definitely venture into more spiritual aspect of that religion. And a lot of people are not aware of it because they are living in the physical aspects of reality without considering other aspects of it. But most things is not moving from the physical into more subtle fields. It can do that. I mean, if a person who decides to revert into Islam puts on a hijab and then just proceed into more spiritual aspect, that could be one aspect, but the intention behind wearing a hijab is not gonna be there, from the beginning, from the start. So it is this intention and the sources of the intention of the practice that is more, sipping down to the more subtle aspect of the religion and the more spiritual expressions. And that is where the most important aspects might be of the religion. But I think one way of actually, connecting into a religion is the emotional aspect. So people who are surrounded by Muslims, they will be more accepting towards Muslims and towards the practices of Muslims, and feel more emotional connected to other Muslims. And then that also, because they are surrounded by them, they might feel like it's reflecting them, so there will be some interaction in that between them in that social context, and that will evolve into some emotional connections, not just to the people but also into the religion that somewhere is there might be expressed. And that is one way of actually tapping into the religion. Now, some people might say, okay, if it's meant, if God willing, you will find Islam. But I think at the same time, it's it's something that is very complex of understanding from a human perspective. I don't think I will be able to understand everything. I don't think anyone else is going to be able to completely understand how things are, because of the, we are just part of something, but it's something much bigger. So I think that is one thing. But I definitely think that people should be aware of this shaming potential hindrance towards becoming a revert. I know that some people also have another religion with them through their life, and they become very emotional connected to that religion. They might creating their own identities, their whole lifestyles and everything around certain religion, and then all of a sudden they're like faced with Islam, and they're like, okay, is my whole world going to crack down, or what is gonna happen? And that is like important, because in that overlap into another religion and taking up a new practice, there's gonna be probably not so much like clashes and stuff in that, like becoming part, because becoming is something you're doing constantly. You are like becoming something because you're watching a TV show and you're seeing something there. You're taking up some impressions from that without even being conscious of them, and that is affecting you as a person and what you decide to do later on. So I don't think there is any clash in that, you know, because you are constantly becoming either way. But I think that having like a religion throughout life, that might set the ability of being spiritual as a person, you know, or having some form of spiritual understanding. And that spirituality could just be transformed into taking up other religious practices that are part of another religion, such as Islam. And so that is my sort of reflections on it. I know there's so much more to talk about this and to sort of delve into, and I might be able to speak more about it. And I'm very, because I also study in the university, of course, about this, so I think it's such an interesting topic.